When Alan Wake launched in May of 2010, the game was looking to be Remedy's next big success, or at least it was supposed to be, with its unique light and dark mechanics, unmatched atmosphere, a deep narrative, mesmerizing music and audio, a pre-release marketing campaign for the ages, and one of the most thrilling, psychological stories in gaming history. Alan Wake had everything going for it, except one thing: a good release date. May 18th, 2010, a day that will live in infamy as the day that Red Dead Redemption killed off Alan Wake and many others. All these games might share a release month, but there really wasn't any sharing to be had. Red Dead Redemption would claim most of the pie when it went on to sell 1.5 million copies in the month of May alone, and Mario Galaxy 2 would come in second, selling 563,000 copies just in the last 7 days of May. Alan Wake wouldn't even have much of the pie left to claim. The game sat at the NPD's number 8 spot at 145,000 units. But for those of us that played it at launch, it was a life-changing experience. Luckily, the game's impact would grow strong enough that after 13 years, we're about to receive our well-deserved sequel. So the question is, why? What made the original game so special? How has the game continued to grow its cult following even after all these years? And why do I, and many other gamers, consider it the best game ever? In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the original Alan Wake one last time before Alan Wake 2 arrives, and give it a proper send-off. So grab your brightest flashlight and join me while we take the nearest ferry into a town called Bright Falls and find out why I consider Alan Wake the greatest 12 hours in video gaming history. I hope you guys enjoy.
You must turn the lights on. Turn the light on.
Back to work, boy.
When it comes to Alan Wake's story, there's 4 main categories I want to talk about: the manuscript pages, the episodic structure of the game, the cutscenes, and the radio and TV shows found throughout the campaign. Let's start with the manuscript pages.
The loose sheets of paper were pages from a manuscript entitled Departure. That was the name I planned to use for the next novel I had never gotten started. I was named the author. I hadn't written it. I couldn't remember writing it. In the scene on the page, the hero was attacked by an axe murderer in the woods at night.
In a lot of these manuscripts, they'll foreshadow events that haven't even happened yet, and you'd think that would actually spoil the story, but it never feels that way. In the moment, you never really fully grasp the meaning of them. Usually when you finally reach that moment that was in that manuscript, it's actually really satisfying.
The night had been one desperate situation after another. I was exhausted, and my body felt as though it had been chewed up and spat out. The flashlight was heavy in my hand, and each pull of the trigger sent a painful shock up my arm. But I was finally out of the woods and things were looking up. That's when I heard the chainsaw.
The majority of these are going to be from the perspective of Alan Wake, but a big chunk of them are also from the side characters' perspectives. So you actually get to get into the minds of other characters as well, which is really cool.
The logging site was a mess. The modular office had been pushed off the cliff. Deputy Thornton climbed up from the wreckage excited, breathing hard from the exertion. Nobody there. It's weird. Don't you think that's weird? Bored, Mulligan let out a mighty snort. Hell, it's always weird, Thornton. Just a question of sorting out what kind of weird it is this time around.
At the beginning of the game, you run into a guy named Mott. At this point, he's just rude to you. You don't really talk to him.
Let's see who has the last laugh, city boy.
Okay. Good day to you, too.
But later on, you find a manuscript that tells you what he was thinking at the time.
For Mott, spying on the writer on the ferry had been a disappointment. His boss had made Wake out to be something special, but Mott hadn't been impressed. He'd gotten a good long look at the wife, though, and he liked what he saw. Mott had fantasized about goading Wake into a fight, but it hadn't happened. Still, he'd get his chance to see if the writer had anything in him. He'd been promised as much.
I think that's so cool that they add this much detail to just a literal interaction that's at the beginning of the game. They also do a really good job of keeping these manuscripts well paced throughout the campaign. It always keeps the player engaged with the environment. You'll start to actually crave and want more and start looking all around and go to places that you probably wouldn't before, just because it unlocks more of the story. It also helps that they're so well voice acted and the writing is always so poetic.
The man turned to face me. His face was covered in shadows. It was hard to make him out in the darkness of the forest that surrounded us. but the axe he lifted was plain to see. It glistened with the blood of his victim. I spun around just as the cloud was upon me. For an instant, I stared into 100 dead eyes, black pearls glittering in the darkness. Zane cut its heart out, but it didn't die. The thing that wore Barbara's face kept crooning sweet nothings sugar-laced with poison. He put on the suit, untied the monster from the chair. The thing in his arms thrashed weakly, but he held fast. He stepped outside, off the pier, and into the dark water, a sinking pinprick of light descending toward a bottom that never came.
On top of the manuscripts, I love how the story is structured overall. The episodic TV format fits this game perfectly. And at the end of each episode in the game, there is a song that plays, each one being a licensed song that usually fits the tone and feeling of the game at that point.
There's an old town road with mystery of Tom the poet and his muse, and a magic lake which gave a life to the words the poet used. Now the muse she was his happiness, and he rhymed about her grace, and told the stories of treasures deep beneath the black and white. That's how you reshape destiny.
And after the song wraps up, the next episode will start with a previously on Alan Wake recap.
Previously on Alan Wake. Under the influence of the dark presence, I wrote a horror story that is coming true. Jagger had been my editor, making sure that the unfolding story would make...
Alan Wake also has some amazing cutscenes. We haven't had a storm for months. And the moment I'm recording this Alan Wake review, there's a storm going on outside. I think the dark presence is here. I think I'm conjuring it by reading this script. Damn. Let's keep going. Alan Wake has some of the best cutscenes too, like some of my all-time favorites. Whether it's the end of episode 1 with the beautiful cop car lights and the gas station, the well-lit room where Alan finds the clicker with Thomas Zane narrating over it, or probably my favorite scene, at least visually, is the cutscene where Alan dives and grabs the flare just before the tornado grabs him. This wide shot of Alan falling towards the water is a moment I'll never forget. During gameplay, you'll also come across other bits of story through the police radio conversations and the Patmain radio broadcast. These are great because they provide the player with a bigger picture of what's going on away from Wake. A lot of the time it's related to an event you were a part of, or someone you met is a part of. It makes the world feel much bigger.
My deputies tell me you fired at Wake and he didn't have a gun. You almost hit a civilian instead. Over.
Sheriff, Wake's running. I'm giving chase. I don't have time for this.
Well, make the time. You can't just go shooting at people in my town. Over.
I'm a federal agent pursuing a fugitive. You want to discuss my methods, Sheriff? Make an appointment. Over.
You stay right where you are, Agent Nightingale. I'm on my way. Out.
They really do an amazing job of making everyone you meet in this game have a bigger role than you might initially understand. Like Walter, who is the drunk that you meet at the police station. Walter may just seem like a funny side character you only meet one time, but no. He's later heard on the Patmain radio show talking about getting out on bail.
Get through, caller. You're on KBF FM.
Hey, Pat, it's Walt Snyder.
What's on your mind, Walt?
I had argument with Danny. You know Danny, and, then I got in trouble with the law. You know, Danny's my best friend, and, they let me out on bail today.
Then later you find a manuscript about Walter fighting his friend Danny, who had become a Taken. Then he gets drunk after escaping, and that's how he ended up in jail. And finally you run into Walter in his final moments during episode 4.
I know you. You were in jail the other day.
My buddy, Danny, I lost him. Something's gone wrong with him. It's not him. Like a real bad follow-up to a real good movie. The best friend's suddenly the bad guy who wrote this crap anyway.
Even a character like Walter, who seems like insignificant at the time, has a story arc and even has some of the funniest dialogue in the game.
Especially in Night Springs.
Throughout the world, you also find 6 Twilight Zone-inspired Night Springs TV shows. These aren't necessarily related to the plot of the story, but they're so well done that you never want to miss them. My favorite episodes were probably The Quantum Suicide and The Man in the Mirror. Another bit of storytelling you'll receive are the flashback videos of Alan in the cabin. In these, Alan is usually rambling random thoughts, and at first you really don't understand them. You'll be wondering if Alan is just imagining them. They were always a mystery I was compelled to figure out.
I'll reach her. I'll fix it up. I'll bring her back. The story will come true. If I stop, she's lost. I don't believe this. It'd been me on the TV, talking crazy. Was I losing my mind?
Throughout this game, there are so many great story hooks. One great example is at the end of episode 1, where Alan comes to find out that the cabin at Cauldron Lake is missing. As a player, the first time you see this reveal, it's so surprising. It really was a great way to have the player and the character feel the same feeling at the same time. I think that really connected myself, at least, in a good way to Alan, because it felt like we were going to have to figure this shit out together. I think it's one of the best surprises and story hooks I've ever seen.
I had to figure a way out of this. Any second now, and Stucky would be knocking on the door with his axe like Nicholson in The Shining.
If I've heard one complaint over the years the most about Alan Wake is about its combat. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the combat is the most varied combat of any game ever, but it's not bad either. Anyone saying it's awful either didn't give it a fair chance or they just don't like this type of combat in the first place. Myself, I personally actually really like the combat. A lot, actually. There's no other game out there that has these light and dark mechanics. You can't fight the enemies until the barrier of darkness is broken, which actually adds a bit of depth to each fight. Instead of coming into a room and instantly just unloading bullets into every enemy you see, you are forced to do this tango with them, even needing to utilize dodges and flares throughout the fights. You even have the option to use these flares to buy yourself time to reload or create some space for yourself to run away. Or another strategy is you can throw down the flare on the ground, and it'll still burn the darkness away from the enemy. And then if you point your flashlight at them, it burns the darkness away twice as fast. At something like Max Payne, there's definitely more weapons overall, but that's because Max Payne is an action hero. Alan Wake, on the other hand, is just an out-of-shape writer looking for his wife. I don't think Alan's capable of operating a grenade launcher or dual-wielding submachine guns. And in the Signal and the Rider DLCs, they managed to bring a lot more variety in the gameplay too. Words floating above the ground can be used to kill the Taken. And in the Rider DLC, I love sending enemies through the floor on the bridge. And one of the coolest gameplay set pieces of any game ever is when you're ascending the mountain and trying to reach the lighthouse. You burn the words away and collapse the train away, allowing the lighthouse to destroy the Taken for you. I always thought this was super cinematic whenever I'd play. The lighthouse is this all-powerful mythical force in the dark place, and you're finally able to just like team up with it, you know? It's fucking awesome. So in Alan Wake, there's this dark presence that's taken over Bright Falls, which is causing the local townsfolk to lose their minds. There are the common Taken, larger assault Taken, invisible Taken, and a super fast flanker Taken. They do throw ravens and inanimate objects as well. As much as I like the visuals of them and the idea of them being unpredictable, they are definitely my least favorite enemies to fight. But it is pretty satisfying hitting one of the flocks with your flare gun. But what Alan Wake lacks in enemy variety is definitely made up for in its AI. The AI in this game is amazing. It is constantly keeping you on your toes. The way the enemies swarm around you is absolutely frightening. Alan Wake isn't considered a scary game, but I'd say it's a very tense game. Whenever those flankers would just go right out of your view and you could hear their footsteps, it would always make me so anxious. To this day, I think Alan Wake has possibly the most satisfying feeling shotgun of any game ever. The kick and the punch and the sound effect is so good.
Good. Keep your eyes open, okay?
The flare gun was probably the best weapon I could imagine against the dark things I was facing.
Then two more of the most satisfying weapons of any game is the flare gun and the flashbang. The flare gun is essentially a rocket launcher in a pistol form.
It took me a moment to recognize the flashbang grenades. They were an ideal weapon for my situation.
And the flashbang is a massive light bomb. I love that piercing sound the flashbang makes when it's tearing the enemies apart. Okay, now that I kind of defended the gameplay, I kind of want to play devil's advocate and tell you some of my gripes as well. Outside of episode 2 and 3, I thought there was an overabundance of ammo throughout the game. I was constantly full on bullets and batteries. The feeling of approaching a supply box and not being able to grab everything never felt great. It's essentially the equivalent of being overburdened in an RPG. Nightmare difficulty kind of fixes this to some degree, but I still found myself pretty full on supplies a lot of the time. In the 15 or so playthroughs that I've had of this game over the years, probably my biggest complaint of Alan Wake has got to be the automatic shoulder swapping that the camera does during gameplay. I'm not 100% sure why this is in the game. It makes it more cinematic or something, I don't know. But the good news is, the PC version of the game actually fixes this completely. You still have the option to switch shoulders, but there's no automatic switching while using the mouse and keyboard. Which for me, even though I'm a console guy most of the time, I prefer playing the PC version of this game. Over the years, Alan Wake has become kind of famous for its switch from open world to linear design, but what I really want to talk about is how much Alan Wake still feels like an open world at times. Sometimes you don't even realize you're playing through a linear level. Remedy does such a good job with its level design, and the areas are so big that the player never is going to feel like they're going through a singular path. You're just following interesting environmental cues. Whether it's a watchtower in the distance, or a safe haven light, or something like yellow spray paint. The game leads the player with interesting things you want to explore. I also love that you're never really following a map marker either. You can look at your compass to find out what direction you need to go, but I never felt like I needed to look at that. Or even better, what I like to do, for most of my playthroughs, I just turn off the HUD. It's much more cinematic, and because of the level design, you never feel lost. As you'll see here in this footage, Remedy has populated the levels with signs and other guidance markers. It always feels like it's an actual hiking trail or national park.
Lover's Peak was at the far end of the nature trail.
When you enter into a new area, you'll almost always be able to see a long way into the distance. Like here in Chapter 2, there is this spot where you can see this blue porta potty. At first, you might not think anything of it, but once you finally reach that porta potty, you're like, whoa, I didn't think I was actually going there. It makes the world feel alive and bigger in your head.
The gas station was my best bet. They'd have a phone I could use. It looked like a long hike through the forest to get there.
Another great example is in Episode 1, after your car crash, Wake will spot the gas station in the distance. Then you head out, and 30 minutes later, you finally arrive at the gas station. No loading screens or level changes. You actually walk through this whole level.
After the insanity I had just experienced in the darkness, the lights of the gas station felt comforting, at least for a moment. The sane world reasserted itself.
This feeling happens so often in Alan Wake that you start to feel like this game is semi-open world. It gives off this impression that if you can see it, you literally can go there. Then if you walk over to the bridge before going into the gas station, if you look over this way, you can see a watchtower in the distance. And guess what? You're going to be going over there in a couple episodes. Then once you arrive at this location, you can look through some binoculars and finally realize that this is the watchtower you saw a couple hours ago. It's another moment of, wow, we are actually existing in this world and exploring every part of it. And then from this watchtower, you can spot the radio station and a big antenna in the distance. You're going to be traveling over there too. No tricks, no loading screens. You're literally traversing this area by foot all the way through the woods. I can't tell you how satisfying this is. You get this well-designed linear experience, but also this open-world feeling. Then once you arrive at the radio station, you can hear Pat Maine hosting the radio show. It even lets you sneak up to the window and listen in on the conversation.
Pat, it's Lorna Miles.
Oh, why, hello, Lorna. What do you have for us?
Well, I just don't see why the cops bother with the trailer park.
What do you mean?
It's a trailer park. Of course you're going to have trouble in a place like that. I mean, what do you expect? The sheriff should be helping us normal citizens instead of wasting resources on those people.
Good job, Wade. Okay, stick close. Our first stop is the town hall. The keys to the chopper are there.
And one last example is in episode 5, when you team up with Sarah Breaker. Everything you see in this town is either a place you're going to travel through or you're going to travel by. The town is not just a backdrop. And in this level, the end goal, Sarah Breaker and you are on your way to the helicopter pad, which can be seen all the way from the streets of Bright Falls. And once again, you get to travel all the way up there by foot. And then once you get up there and you look back and you can see the town, it's such a cool feeling. A good atmosphere can come in all shapes and sizes, but if it's good, it makes the game so immersive that you almost forget that you're even playing a game. In a game like Darkwood, you'd think its top-down perspective and clunky controls would detract from its immersion, but it doesn't. It's one of the most atmospheric games you'll ever play. Or the game Thomas Was Alone, which is made up of simple shapes and basic environments, but with the combination of the great narrator and the amazing music, it has one of the best atmospheres of any game.
Thomas was alone. Wow. A weird first thought to have.
And there are hundreds of examples like this, but one of the games that always seems to be near the top is Alan Wake. Throughout the campaign, a lot of times I just had to stop and admire the world itself. I just sat there and let it play around me. I just love the look of this game. The color palette, the fog, the way they set up each area and scene to look like a badass concept art. It gets me every time. And it's a big reason why when I'm creating fan art, it's usually 90% gonna be about Alan Wake.
Can you hear that, Al? Music?
Of course. We need to find where it's coming from. That's the message the Andersons talked about. That's the whole reason we're here.
Lady of the Light? Oh, that's gotta be... what's-her-face? The crazy lamp lady from the town.
Cynthia Weaver.
Right. Must be.
It's really hard to pick a favorite thing about Alan Wake because I love every aspect of the game, but I think the music might top the list of its crowning achievements. Throughout the game, you'll hear lots of licensed songs at the end of episodes, or even at the end of Pat Main's radio shows. And Remedy also had Poets of the Fall create custom music for the game. An example is the song you just heard at the beginning of the music section. The Poet and the Muse is an amazing song on its own, but it also plays a massive role in the story. But these licensed tracks aren't even the best part of Alan Wake's music. That would be the music composed by Petri Alonco. This soundtrack is without a doubt one of the best soundtracks of all time. I can't believe it's Petri Alonco's first ever game soundtrack too. It would take me an hour to cover all the music in this game, so instead I'm just going to highlight some of my favorites. Let's start with the theme song of this game. Cool fact about this song too is Petri Alonco created this track as a demo when he was applying for the composer position. In a Laced Records interview, he said this: "In the early mid-2000s, nobody on the planet wanted the opportunity to score Alan Wake more than me. I suspect I got the gig through sheer self-confidence more than anything else, and I threw everything into those initial demos, one of which ended up as the main theme, to my great surprise." Wouldn't that be an amazing feeling? You're just applying for the job, you send in this demo, and Remedy loves it so much that they put it as the theme song for the game. That's so badass. Next up is the track titled A Writer's Dream. This is the song that narrates at the beginning of the game when he's talking about Stephen King and it's going through the mountains. The little bit I wanted to point out specifically is the part of the song that hits right when the logo appears, and it transitions to the dream sequence.
My name is Alan Wake. I'm a writer.
Then we got The Clicker. The Clicker is the song that plays during the New York City flashbacks with Alan and Alice, where Alan gifts Alice the clicker for the first time. I love the twinkling sound of this song. It's like a Christmas song mixed with a bit of horror and romance. Next time you go on a date, maybe pull out the clicker. It might just rescue your love life from a dark place. Then we got one of the most hype-sounding songs of the game. It's called Mirror Peak. The part when the drumsticks kick in, oh man, that's so good. Our fifth song is the happiest and brightest song of the whole game, The Well-Lit Room. This is when Alan and the crew finally reach the vault with the shoebox and the clicker inside. The thing I love most about Alan Wake's soundtrack is how diverse and varied each song is. They all fit within the same theme and like the tone of this game, but each song has a wide range of emotions to it. And I think these final two songs that I want to show off do this the best. This first one is called Departure. This is the song that plays during the final cutscene. Notice how the song begins with hope and victory as Alice swims to the surface. But then we get a dip in tone when her and us realize that she's escaped, but now she's alone. Then another change comes when the camera pans back to Bright Falls, where everyone seems to just be oblivious to the reality that us players are aware of. Alan is still stuck in the dark place, and the dark presence is still in fact present. How a song can go from happy to sad, then happy, and back again to sad in less than 2 minutes is always impressive to me. The final song I want to highlight is not only my favorite song in this game, it is probably my favorite song of all time. Not even kidding. Of any game, of any movie, TV show, this is the one. The track is called Welcome to Bright Falls. Whenever I hear this song, I feel so many happy emotions because the whole game and its events start playing in my head. And it's just another song that has multiple emotions throughout. So many highs and lows, and the lows still feel high. They sound sad, but they always have this like slice of hope to them. It's so well done. And I'm not even kidding. When I die, I want this song playing in my funeral. Because if I'm gonna die, I want to go out in style, man. Christina, my wife, you hear that? If I die in this song, I want this song. You know how Remedy calls or uses the term place of power a lot? I have this pamphlet here from Crater Lake. Right here. I brought it back. And there was something really interesting inside that I wanted to show you guys. Well, look what's inside of the Crater Lake pamphlet. A place of power. I'm not sure if Remedy got place of power from, you know, like the documents from Crater Lake, but that's still pretty cool. And on top of that, I've traveled to lighthouses. I had my second kid, my first son. I named him after Alan, Sebastian Wake Link. So when I say Alan Wake changed my life, some people might say I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. It really does mean so much to me. Like, this game impacted my life so much, enough to where I would name my son after the character, you know? And as we come up to Alan Wake 2, I feel lots of anticipation and excitement, but I'm also like super nervous because I don't know if Alan Wake 2 could ever live up to Alan Wake 1 for me. I know for a lot of people, it's going to be better for them. You know, I've heard lots of people that don't like Alan Wake, and that's fine. But for me, Alan Wake 1 is literally the most perfect 12 hours of video gaming that I've ever played. Alright guys, if you guys enjoyed this video, definitely please consider liking it and share it around. I plan to review the rest of Remedy's titles here in the next few months, and I hope you can join me in my next video when I'm actually going to be reviewing Alan Wake 2 after I've gotten it after launch and I can sit down and finish it. Anyways guys, thanks again for watching, and until next time, stay in the light my friends. Later.